right. Hello, everyone, wherever you are. Good evening in the US, good morning in the other side of the world, Australia, New Zealand. I appreciate you joining this second workshop. Hey, Karen, how are you? Today we have quite a bit to cover, and it's also related to the first workshop that it was about awakening. Today it's about cycle breakers. And before we dive into the topic, let's just start with some admin, and there's a few new faces today here. So let's just go through it. I recorded that check of my list. Little bit of a disclaimer is that this workshop series, I put it together not following anyone's instructions or trying to follow religion beliefs or dogmas. This is just my own personal journey, my own personal point of view. And the information that I have gathered in the last few years, reading books, doing my own inner work, seeing clients, and something in me just received the message that we needed to start talking about these topics. I feel like there's a lot of people that have a lot of questions, and talking about different things on each workshop, I feel like it will give you a good understanding. Is not, I feel like these workshops are more like introduction to different topics. And I would tell you that if you feel called to dive in deeper in specifics, go wild and do it. Go find books, go find sources and courses and videos. Talking about videos, I don't know if you saw the documentary that I shared in the WhatsApp group. It's called The Awakening. It's so good if you have not seen it. It's only 1 hour long. It's just really, really good. I recommend it. Did anyone see it popping up? Just say yes or yeah. Yes, thank you. Yeah, so if you have time, I want to rewatch it. I watched it 2 times already, but I just feel like it was so much information that I was like, man, this is good stuff, and perfect timing as well. Another thing that I wanted to do is that last time I introduced the verbal facilitation from Access Consciousness. This is one of the modalities that I practice. I do it on myself, I do it for clients, and this is just to clear the energy of this particular session, because I don't want, sometimes we come to places or to meetings, workshops, and we have already an expectation of what is going to be like, what are we going to be learning, and what are we going to feel like with the information. And sometimes this information is quite fresh and new, and so that's why I like to run the clearing statements to just clear the energy. So the way it works is that I just say open questions. You don't have to answer. You just, when I say this, would you like to destroy and uncreate that? You just say in your mind, or if you say yes, and then because you are acknowledging the energy, and then I just clear it. That's the way it also works in when I work with one-on-one clients. We just deep dive into specific for the person, right? They have questions, and then we just ask a question, we go with that energy, and then more things pop up, more questions. So it's almost like you just start clearing layer by layer until you, most of the time, you get to the root cause of specific situation that happened in your life, and that's how you keep clearing the energy. So for this specific workshop, I'm just going to say all the projections, expectations, limitations, implants and explants that you have related to the topics that we're going to be talking about today, to the whole Reconnecting with Your Inner Wisdom workshop series, and any belief system that you have that you might feel triggered, will you destroy and create all of that, please? Yes, right and wrong, good and bad, pot and poke, or not sure about what's and beyonds. And that's the clear statement from Access Consciousness. This is just the way we clear. We bring up the energy from the subconscious mind up to the conscious mind, and we just like, get rid of it. Because it's stuff that we just don't want to do. When we have a lot of stuff in our mind, it almost feels like a pressure cooker that is just like steam there. And so when you start releasing the energy, it gives you space to expand and learn more things and absorb new things, and you don't have so many point of views or stories linked to a specific topics, because, you know, we have had a story of our lives, our families. They told us about what maybe is a cycle breaker, what is an awakening. Maybe you have already point of views about those things. So when we clear the energy, we just almost like erasing, you know, it's like get rid of that old paper and just getting a new, beautiful notepad. You know, we all love notepads, so that's great. Okay, and then like last time, I like to start with a little bit of a meditation. As I said before, this is to me a women's circle. This is not a Zoom call. I feel like now these days technology works in our favor because we can connect with Australia at the moment and New Zealand and, you know, other places in the world. But this is a circle. And this is how ancient women used to get together, facing each other. And that's what we're doing now. So I'm just going to put some music on. If you can just remove your shoes, if you are wearing any shoes, just place your feet on the ground to connect and start breathing at your own pace. I want you to close your eyes and imagine that we are outside. Listen to the music or nature that is like music to our ears. Connect with those beautiful sounds of little birds. Maybe it's daytime, so sunny, beautiful day next to the mountains, next to the forest. We're gathering together. Pick your outfit. We're in a ceremony. We're sitting around a circle, around a fire. Maybe there's a beautiful mandala on the floor made of flowers. Focus on the sounds. It doesn't matter that you're at home. It doesn't matter we are far away. What matters is the intention of this gathering. If you look around, you see familiar faces, new faces, older women, younger women, family, friends, sisters, babies. This is a women circle, community, unity. That's why it's a circle. Everyone is equal. No one is more or less than the other one. We can see each other. We can listen to each other. This is the way everyone, not only women, used to gather and used to talk about their supplies, their lives, the weather, the seasons, just being one with nature. I now want you to place one hand on your heart and the other hand on your pelvic area. Doesn't matter which hand, just try to connect with your inner wisdom and your inner fire. Imagine a color, can be pink and golden or silver, whatever you prefer. And connect with that archetype, whatever it is for you right now. Don't put a name if you don't need to. Just think about it. Whose role are you playing right now? And what is that coming from? We're going to talk about cycle breaking cycles. What does that mean? Remember that we are here speaking our truth. And only a few hundred years ago, we would have been persecuted for doing this, for being women together, sharing our truth, learning from each other. When we break cycles, we're reclaiming our voice, the voice that maybe our mom didn't have, our aunties and grandmas didn't have. When we break cycles, we speak for them, we move for them, we connect with the energy, and we carry that energy in our wombs. for the future. When we reclaim our inner voice, we are saying yes to our true nature, to the wild woman within us. Let's breathe in deeply and exhale. One more time, let's inhale and exhale. And one more time, inhale and exhale everything. Remember that the work that you do, you just started your journey, you started to ask questions. It doesn't matter if you're this age or that age and you consider yourself old or young. That doesn't matter. Not important. The importance here is that you connect with that true self that has been trying to get your attention, maybe a long time. And maybe there was too many distractions around you. You were not able to see it. You were not able to feel it. And something maybe recently caught your attention. And you now decided to look within and explore that maybe unknown territory that is full of potential, full of possibilities, full of beauty and light. Imagine that we hold the hand, we connect with our energy. It might be far away, but with energy there's no time or space. This is a vortex of energy, of unconditional love. This space is safe, is love, unconditional. With that, when you feel ready, you can open your eyes, move your fingers and toes, and just start our workshop. All right. If you need something comes to mind, just put it in the messages. If there's any question that comes to mind, put it in the messages. We might try to just answer on the spot, or maybe at the end there's always question and answer section, so you can just ask anything that you want at the end. Okay, I would like you to tell me in the message box if you consider yourself a cycle breaker. Just a yes or no. Maybe you've never thought about it. That's also good. Just what your heart is saying to you, what you think. I go, yes, yes, yes. Me, yes, as well. Now I'm going to ask you, that's all good. We'll dive in now and find out more about it. I would say that if you got called for this workshop series in general, you are probably already in your own journey or you're only starting, because when something in us ignites this fire of curiosity, it's because our soul is trying to reach us. Okay? Sue, okay, let's see what you think at the end of this workshop. Maybe something's different. Now, what are you going to say? What I want you to ask yourself if you know what a cycle breaker is, what does it mean? You don't have to have the perfect answer. You can just say yes or no. What entitles, or how do you define it? What is a cycle breaker? You can put it in the message in the box. Healing generational trauma. Yeah, that's a big one. You don't have to know. This is the purpose of this workshop. I was just wondering. Cycle breakers, it means a lot of things. Essentially, is when we realize that something is not right. Not in a way that things are right or wrong, but in a way that you start perceiving that whatever you are doing and living is just not sitting right within you. Yes, living the life that my ancestors wanted to live, reclaiming our voices. This is basically reconnecting with your inner wisdom. So just to tell you a little bit about what is a cycle breaker, I will tell you a little bit of my story. I feel like last time in the first workshop, I didn't touch so much on this because I thought it was perfect for this one. So I've been into holistic practices, fully into it, like for about 2 years, even though I started learning about Reiki and I became a Reiki practitioner back in 2016. Back then, I was working in the fashion industry. I had a lot of labels on me. I was a people pleaser, which we will dive into that as well later. I was just following everyone's expectations, including mine. And so I was going with my life. I was a designer. Every day, everyone knew that I was a designer. I was doing art direction, and I was also doing Reiki, but only for family members and very close people. Never share it with anyone. Why? Because in my mind, I had this idea that I could only be one thing, what I decided to be when I was 20, 21 years old. And everyone knew that that's who I was. And I thought that I was going to be only a designer for the rest of my life. And so years passed. And then I started to hear this voice within me that wanted me to do something different. And so for a long time, if you remember the workshop from last week, my ego was so attached to my labels and my roles that to break that ego and until my ego died, it was extremely painful. It took me a really long time to embrace the new being that I wanted to be. And to being able to embrace someone new, you have to break cycles. A cycle is something that has been happening for a really long time because someone told you, because you accepted it, because life put you in that position. Doesn't really matter how you got into that. To be able to change from this person to another one, you have to be able to break cycles. Sometimes that sounds like going against your family and what they believe. Maybe it means that against your partner, or what they think of you. Sometimes you start changing so much that your partner or your family start perceiving you as a new person. And the funny thing is that when you change, the perception of you changes for them. So the person that they knew all your life suddenly is different. So then for their own point of view, is like, well, Vanessa is not the same person that it used to be. Who is she now? I mean, sometimes it can even be triggering for people because they don't know how to treat you anymore because you are not the person that they met 5, 10 years ago. I moved to Australia 12 years ago. So it was funny to see when I was going through my own changes that I was going back to Peru where my family still lives. And every time people would tell me, you are different now. You are different now over the years, always different, over different. And I never knew what to say. I was just, I don't know, maybe it was just changing. I was not even noticing. And then when I started doing my own work, it started making sense. I was like, of course I'm changing. I left my culture to go to a new one. Things happened to me, experience happened to me. So I was evolving and transforming and changing. And because I put the layer of changing, doing my own inner work, that carries more change on that. So when I was going back after 1 or 2 years, people were noticing more, because when you are on the everyday and you see your friends every day, or maybe your friends are changing the same way that you are, you don't even notice it. It's like, yeah, this is the way it's happening. You sort of like evolve with them. But then when you meet people that haven't seen you in a while, or your family haven't seen you or haven't talked to you, sometimes they even look at you like, what are you talking about? They can't even understand the way you talk, because you're just more conscious and you just start doing your own work. You're more aware. Something that used to happen to me is that I lived in Australia for a long time. And so I changed my own everyday, my lifestyle changed. And then when I went back to Peru, I was being aware of how I was before, how they act, their customs, or the way they do things, the way they talk, because I was already breaking patterns that now I was able to see. Before I couldn't see them because I was within it, was part of it, you know? But then if you leave that box, that we spoke about that on the first workshop, you decide to leave the box. I mean, of course, if you leave the country, it's a bit easier, right? I'm talking about like you leave some place and then you return, people are going to notice it. Now, a cycle breaker in the spiritual point of view is someone that noticed the patterns, noticed that there was some trauma in your family. Something happened to your mom, to your dad, to your siblings, to your grandma. Maybe there's some secrets that no one talks much about it. Things happen in the past that they don't want to remember anymore. And the funny thing is that as a cycle breaker, you get almost like a call to trying to find out more about it. Sometimes it's a bit triggering for your family, even because your family is not used to someone trying to investigate what happened there. Tell me what happened with mom, what happened with grandma, why she doesn't like to talk about this, why she always changes the subject when we go into this time of her life or his life. And so when you start realizing those tiny moments in your everyday life, something in you gets activated. To me, it's like the inner detective. It's like, what's going on? I'm noticing something that no one else have noticed. This is the call of the cycle breaker, because you have identified as something that you want to change. You don't want to repeat what your mom lived or your dad lived. You now see their belief systems. They know things, but in a way of according to their point of views. Because when you believe on something, for example, oh my God, for example, this is great. When I left the corporate world, because I left it like 3 years ago when I moved to the US, and I decided to not go back to the corporate world. It was just not something that I wanted to do anymore. It was not resonating with me and my new path. And when I told that to my parents, they were like, what do you mean? You're not going to be an art director anymore? You're not going to be working for big corporations? Because that was me all the time. I worked fashion industry, the corporate industry, financial, it's just all big names, right? And I said, no, I want to work with small business owners, and I'm just going to work from home, and I'm going to talk to people and see clients. They were like, okay. It was good because they supported me. They said, if that's what makes you happy, go for it. But I was already perceiving their limitation in their minds or their point of views, because in their generation, my parents were born in the 50s. It's all about the title. It's all about who you are in this society. What, if you won the award of the best worker, or the person that works the longest hours, or the person that goes on the weekends. It was all this belief system of working so hard to make money. So when I told them that that was not who I was, because I believe in abundance and in resonance, in frequency, that energy of In Access, we call it not money, we call it abundance, or we call regenerative money, the energy of money. Because even if I trade with someone, it's not money exchange, but she's giving me or he's giving me something and I'm giving them something in return. So sometimes we go with, I've done design work even. I got a full-on masterclass from this person that charged a lot of money, and I did work for them, design work. I didn't pay all these hundreds of dollars because they say, you can choose one of my courses, I'll give it to you for free. So that's exchange, and doesn't mean that I need to kill myself working hard. I still receive something that helped me in my own development. It's the way you start seeing things. So when you're a cycle breaker, you start going against the current. It's almost like the current goes this way, right? The river, family and society and education and everything goes there. And suddenly you just grab a rock and you say, I'm not going that way. I'm just going to create my own little river that is going to go that way. That's who I am, because I want to be true to myself. I don't want to follow the current anymore. I want to remove the blinder from my eyes and start following my own truth. When you awaken, it's almost, and you break patterns, because I feel like those two are like last week's workshop and today's, it's almost like intertwined. Because when you start breaking cycles, it's because you are awakening to a new reality. And to break cycles, you need to be aware of what it needs to change. This is the part that it comes the famous black sheep of the family. Have you heard about that? Just tell me in the messages, or say yes or something. So I remember when I started hearing this, in my mind, I was like, oh, is that like the rebel of the family? You know, there's a lot of people that, oh, this is the black sheep of the family. It's like the person that goes wild, or it's like different, or when everyone wears pink, she's wearing blue. And when everyone is like, you know, beautiful, tidy hair, she's like, you know, free and hippie, or whatever label people put in the black sheep of the family. So when I was growing up, I always considered myself like the good girl. So I was like, well, I'm definitely not the black sheep, because I'm like the nice girl, right? I'm like the friend of all, and nice and lovely, and you know, everyone loved me. So I'm not a black sheep. And then when I started doing my own work, I realized that I was totally the black sheep. I just never embraced it. And I feel like that happened to us, to all of us, because we are raised to be good girls. We are raised to be people pleasers, to please everyone, especially women. If you think about only like 3 generations ago, like grandma, great grandma, great great grandma, they had to be in a specific way, dressed in a specific form and shape. Their body needed to be this way. Their hair needed to be in that way. Otherwise, they wouldn't have had a husband, a family, approval from family and parents. So what tells you that they basically needed to stop their voice and say no to their true self to be able to fit in the world that they lived. Now we live in a world that is waking up to new realities, and we can have gatherings and everyone dresses the way they feel like, and you start expressing yourself in a different way. But even that way, sometimes family members, they will look at you like, your hair is different, or why did you cut it that way? I remember when I started tattooing my body, because I just started like maybe 5-6 years ago. Every time that I was seeing my mom, there was a new tattoo, and she was like, another one? Another one? When are you going to stop? And I said, I don't know. I just keep being inspired, and because I create my own tattoos, I'm like, I design it and I just get it done. But it was really funny because for years I had this idea that I wanted to create tattoos for myself, but I never did it because of this huge label that my parent put on me, that it was like, you have to be pleasing. You have to agree with everyone. You have to do what they expect you to do. So when you start doing your own thing and speaking your own truth, are you being pleasing? No. You're going against what they said, right? They're like, shh, don't be too loud. Just don't share your opinion. But then you realize, no, because I'm breaking, this is exactly what we want to break, because my mom couldn't speak up, or my grandma couldn't speak up. They couldn't say what they wanted to say. And so now we are reclaiming the voice by using our own voice. As women, we carry a lot of our wombs. You probably have heard that we were already a little cell in our mom's womb and in our grandma's womb, right? Because when we are born, this tiny baby already has all the eggs that we're going to have for until we die. So then if you think about it, our relationship with our grandma on our mom's side is very, very tied to us. So we're going to talk about that when we talk about ancestors and the cosmic mother. That's in week 5 and 6. But just some food for thought, because it doesn't matter if you never met your grandma, or you don't have a close relationship with her, or you just don't see her very often, or maybe she's not around anymore. The relationship between you and her is very energetically, is very important. So something that I started doing is that when I started doing the work and realized all this, I started asking questions. My grandma was not here anymore, but I started asking my mom, how was grandma? What did she talk about? You used to have conversation with her. And it was really interesting, because mom told me that she only realized that she didn't know much about her mom because I started to ask questions. And she thought she was really close to her mom. And I was really close to my grandma as well. And I'm close to my mom. But then I realized that the conversation is almost like it just stays here and maybe goes deep a little bit. But I started thinking, wow, I just didn't know my grandma that much. And she's not around anymore. So I can ask her. I have asked her in like meditations and tried to connect with her, and it has happened. But it's different when they are in person, right? When you can ask them, how were you when you were a child, when you were a teenager? Was your life, what you wanted to do? I mean, maybe she wanted to travel the world with a backpack. And obviously she didn't do it. She got married extremely young. She had kids, and she was just taking care of the family, making sure that the house was pristine. And I remember that only as an adult, I realized that, oh my God, that's a cycle that I want to break. Because I remember even my mom being so stressed about the house being perfectly beautiful and clean, because it was others' expectations. Because I understood that back then, in those times, the way your house looked and the way your children looked, it was because of the mother, because the mom was the one that was stay at home taking care of the kids. So if your kid was bad behaved, or it was dirty, or wild, or whatever labels they put on them, it was because of the mom. And if the mom was raised to be a people pleaser and a good girl, she was not going to let that happen, because it was her own labels that they were being compromised, right? So it's funny now when I talk to my mom, I'm not the one that cooks at home. My husband is the one that cooks most of the time. I know how to cook, but it's not something that I love. It's not like, not something that is part of me, my nature. I love organizing and cleaning. This is just my thing. I love it. And when I moved with Mark, my husband, my mom used to always ask me, so why are you cooking today? And I was like, I'm not cooking. I'm not the one that cooks. And it took her a few years to understand that the cycle broke. Like, I'm not the one that cooks because my mom is the cook, my grandma was, and so on and so on. So she expected me to keep doing the same thing that she did. And so when it didn't happen, I became like, Vanessa doesn't cook, and she's like, she goes on her own with no the husband and things like that. So you need to start thinking of those messages and how we can break them, because that's the only way that we're going to let our true nature be free. When we start reconnecting with our wild woman, and this is an archetype, is that we are going to be reconnecting with our true nature, our true voice. We're not going to following expectations of people or trying to please others or trying to get recognition from others. This is something that happens a lot nowadays in social media, for example. Sometimes we post something and we're like thinking how many people are going to like it, or sometimes you want to post something and you don't do it because you think people are not going to like it. So what about you? You going and thinking about external environment before you. So that's telling you, okay, when you start to break cycles, you're not going to follow what other people expect from you. You're going to follow what you want. Doesn't matter if you get a couple of likes or many likes. This is just with the example of social media. But it's more about, what do you want to be? Who do you want to be? What do you want to say? And when you almost like you start recognizing those patterns in your mind, it's like, oh, I'm not posting it because I'm not going to get approval. Oh, what are they going to say? It's like you're going to be following expectations of others, not the ones that are coming from your heart. I hope this is making sense. I'm just going to drink some water. Now, do you think or you consider yourself in any part of your life that you have been a people pleaser? I was a massive people pleaser. Massive. Yes, yeah. So the good news and bad news is that people pleasing has been around since the patriarchy started. Women centuries ago got trained and indoctrinated to please others, to be almost like a decoration next to the man, right? It's like, oh, this is my wife, so beautiful and perfect. And you would do everything to please the other, which was the man. This is not men or guys or fathers or brothers' fault. This is just society. Because as dysfunctional that it is now, is for the women and for the men. And this is just to take a little break of the conversation, but just to explain patriarchy, the same way that silent women, and we are not trying to reclaim our voice, they made guys strong and completely divided from their emotions. And I don't cry, or I don't dance, or I don't, I'm soft or connected to my heart, because that's weird. That's not a strong man. This is not what is expected from me. And that's why a lot of guys that they're really emotional and very connected with the feminine energy, they just feel outcast, or they just feel strong or weird, or not strong, strange or weird, because it's not what is expected. And this is just because of the patriarchy did that to us. Religion is very linked to patriarchy, but that's a completely different story. So let's just leave it on the side. But this is just to give you an idea. The good news is that if you have recognized that you have been, or you are, or this sounds like this might be me when you are about people pleasing, that's the first step. Something that I tell my clients when they come to me, we have a session and then we have a bit of a chat and they start telling me how they feel, and I said, the first step is already done. You have already recognized what is that you want to challenge. There's a lot of people that go through their whole life and they only realize when they're about to leave their body, or when they're just too old to do something about it. When you start recognizing these cycles that you want to cut and break and change, that's the first step, because the whatever information that was hidden in your hard drive in the back of your head, like your subconscious mind, is now in your conscious mind. And everything that comes forward in your conscious mind, you can change. You can use therapy, you can use energy work, you can do Reiki, you can do your own work. But everything that comes forward and you are allowing the energy to come in front of you and get rid of it is amazing already. It's a huge first step. And just talking about that, let's just destroy and create all the energies that are related to breaking cycles, that feeling strange about it, that feeling that we are disappointing family, that we are being separated from family, or they are not going to accept us the way we are, our true nature. Everything that brings up in our minds, in our hearts, let's destroy and create that. Right and wrong, good and bad, put and pop, not sure about poets and beyonds. And every lifetime that we bought the idea that being true to ourselves, it was going to cause us to suffer or be burned or be killed in a different lifetime, or this lifetime, any other lifetime in the past or the future, let us try and create that. Right and wrong, good and bad, put and poke, or not sure about poets and beyonds. This is just clearing the energy, that everything that is related to those topics, and you're just trying to dissipate that, because it was just getting when you contract your body and you start feeling like a bit tense, it's because the energy is building up. So when you clear the energy, it's almost like just open a window and it's just the wind just go, and you just go back to your lightness. Now, I wanted to talk about when you are a people pleaser and you realize that you don't want to be one anymore. The first thing that usually happens is that you're going to trigger others. And what does that mean? When you are used to please others and you are labeled, you're a nice girl, and you know, you're always being good and you follow the rules, what happens is that when you start doing the opposite, people are going to be confronted. People are going to start saying, why are you different now? Or like the typical, no, when you're a teenager and then suddenly you start responding back to your parents and they're like, excuse me, what are you saying? It's basically the same. You're triggering them, but when you are an adult, they're not going to talk to you that way. But you see like the eyebrow, you know, like just those minimal reactions. And then you realize that, okay, I'm creating disruption here because this is not who I was before. Simple things like creating boundaries around you. You know, stop saying yes to everything. That used to be a massive problem with me. And in the end, I started stressing myself out because I was saying yes to everything. So in the end, my days and my weeks were full of activities and things to do, and meet the friend and the other friend, and coffees and lunches and brunches nonstop, because I was always saying yes. And because I wanted to be happy and pleasing everyone and be good with everyone. The funny thing is that every time that we don't respect ourselves and we are true to who we are and what we want, it's almost like a little piece of us gets taken away from us. Because it's almost like and this sounds a bit strong, but it's almost like you're betraying ourselves when you want to say no, but you say yes. Or when you go to a place that you don't want to go, but you go. Or you want to leave I don't know, a social event after an hour, but you have to stay because that's what is expected. It's almost every time that happens, a little piece of you gets taken away from you. And then after a while, many times you just don't know who you are because you've been giving so much of you to this person, to this family, to this situation, to that story. And then when you suddenly start awakening to all this and you say, wait a second, what happened to who I am or what I want? And then most of the times, or many times, you have no idea who you are or what do you want or who you want to be. You don't know even what you want to do because you've been giving so much. And this is something that also women have been conditioned to do. It's just to give. We are givers most of the time because this is just our nature. We love to give and protect and, share. The problem with that is that we don't have boundaries. It can become dysfunctional and then we become exhausted if we don't speak up. Over time, it's been proven that it gets inside of our body, stuck the energy. So you can get people that have a fibromyalgia or pains in the body or the back or the shoulders. This is all related to many times to energy that is just stuck in your body because of never speaking your truth. That's where somatic work works really well for the body, because when you start working with your body and releasing the trauma that got stuck in you, the pain goes away. It's incredible. Sometimes, I don't know if you heard about rage therapy, where you start hitting something. It could be the floor, or you grab a cushion and you start hitting your bed or your sofa. This is to release your emotions. So this is, for example, just to explain to you clearly, it's like when you see a child, I don't know, 4 or 5, they're always moving. You have never seen a kid that is just like sitting there. They're like touching the floor or jumping non-stop or just going around. The parent will say, stop it, sit down. The kid sits down for a minute and then starts again, because kids are free individuals and they know that they need to process the energy and they just move because the energy needs to dissipate. But then the problem is that if you were raised in a house that they told you that you needed to behave and sit down quiet, where do you think is going all that energy? It's staying within. And then you only realize years and years later when you start doing work on you, and then you have to go back to your childhood. And then you say, oh my God, yes, I remember that. Yes, that happened to me. And that's no one's fault because your parents did what their parents did to them. So they have no idea. They don't know, or people don't know what they don't know. Only when you have the knowledge, the information, is that you can make changes for your own self or for the future or for a friend. So that's why now that we are adults and we are start becoming aware of all these little situations that if I don't speak on my truth, I get a sore throat. Or if I don't, you just don't do what you want, you start getting sick or pains in your body, is because the energy is not moving, is not releasing. And now that we have to work, most of the time people work from the computer the whole day. You cannot tell the truth to your boss. You cannot complain out loud because of social standards. If you're not doing something to release that energy, you don't go dancing every Saturday, or you don't just go and to the garden and start hitting the tree, not the tree, please, not the tree, but the floor, like the grass or something, and the energy dissipates. That's something that I recently learned, and I have started incorporating. I think last workshop, I spoke about moving the body, how dancing and moving can be a way of releasing all that pressure that you have. I remember, and this is a personal story, when I started doing work with my inner child, I remember that when I was a kid, I used to want to cry, but I got told that I need to behave, so I would hold the cry. And then I used to get this pain in my throat. Only years later that I understood that that was my throat chakra being closed down because I was not able to scream and cry. And many years later, when I created my social media account and I created the light arts and I wanted to talk to people, I couldn't. I would put the camera in front of me, and some of you, I think I've shared this story before. I just couldn't talk. And I knew that it was because it was related to my childhood. And I had to do the work with my throat chakra to open up again. Eventually I did. I did the work, and now I think it's good. But it took me a while. If you ask myself like 3 years ago, I would have said, no way that I'm going to stand in front of a camera and talk to an audience or talk to people. I was just not able to. I would get seriously like a pressure here. And then when I started doing meditation for inner child work, I realized, wow, that comes from childhood. And that takes me to talk about how to get rid of the victim mindset. And the interesting thing with that is that when we talk about the victim mindset, it's interesting because, and in a way, a bit nostalgic and sad, is that gets created when we are children. Because when we are children, is that we learn from our environment, and we learn according to the experiences that we saw. Because when we are kids, we don't have many experiences because, we just people take us to places and we are not aware of our body movement or what we say, but we observe. And so we perceive, because kids up to 0 to 7 years old, the channel is completely open. They can perceive energy, like they are powerful little guys. And so if you were a child that it was very aware of your surroundings, even though you couldn't talk, you learn by experience. You saw that, oh, when mom says that and then dad get upset, so that means I shouldn't say that. Okay, noted. And then when you go to this place and use some other experience, and then someone gets sad or like you perceive like some sort of tension, you're like, okay, noted, I cannot do that. And then little by little, you can start learning how the dynamics work. And then when you start growing up, you say, oh, okay, this is the way I need to be. And this is the way I need to behave. And this is the way I need to say things. Otherwise, I will make my mom upset, or I will make my dad angry, or my little friend won't be my friend anymore. I want to be friends with them. So I need to be good. So the interesting thing is that with the victim is that when you have a victim mindset, you carry all this baggage that you learn from childhood to teenage years to young adulthood to up to this point. And so what we have learned is that we have to be in this particular way. And if we don't agree with what other people are saying, it's almost like we either trigger them or they trigger us. And when they trigger us, we become a victim. Why? Because the way the victim mindset works is that when you live in a situation, even now, like yesterday, you went to a coffee shop, you were with your friend, your family, some sort of confrontation or something they said upset you. But the interesting thing is that if you're in a victim mindset, you don't focus, is like, that's an interesting point of view. That person is thinking different than me. You don't think of like, I see how this individual, this person is, that has nothing to do with me. And you are able to detach from that. When you're in the victim mindset, you are not able to do that. Everything that happens to you, you take it personal. Everything that they say and they did, you then bring it back to you. It's like, oh, because so-and-so said that to me and made me feel really upset. Or because so-and-so happened to me 5 years ago, I'm not able to do blah, blah, blah. Or because this thing happened last week, I don't want to try again because I'm going to fail, This is all victim mindset, because you are looking at your environment, looking at every situation that happened around you, and then you bringing it back to you, you attach to it. You become very, it's almost like you act according to those feelings, emotions, thought patterns that you get triggered by it. So I hope this is making sense. Am I getting too confusing, or is making sense? Is it good? So now, it's not, if you realize that you are in the victim mindset, that doesn't mean like, oh my God, I'm on the victim mindset. How am I getting rid of that? No, as I said before, the first step is to identify. If you know, like, yeah, I can recognize myself. Sometimes I do this or I act that way, things like that. That's the first step. Second, how do you transmute that energy? I don't know if you've seen my social media. There's a reel that says my story. And that I talk about that because I went from being the victim for quite a long time, to feel empowered by my experiences. So when you start transmuting the energy, that's when you really start feeling empowered, because you start connecting with your true essence. You're not going to be triggered by external opinions, external situations, stories that happened to you before, experiences that they were maybe painful or challenging. They are not going to be triggered in you anymore, because when you start feeling empowered, you change that victim mindset that, oh my God, why this happened to me, to I understand now why this happened, so then I could learn this other thing. When you go into that mindset of empowering self, you're the self, the victim is not powerful anymore. It's almost like a balloon that it was really big and powerful, and then start losing the air and it start going down and down. And then the new self, the empowered self, that is true to your own nature, you start getting more empowered. You don't see the sadness or the experiences that you lived or the challenges that happened to you, or my parents were this way, or the school maybe this way, or blah blah blah, all these things that happened in the past. It doesn't matter. I don't know if you heard this, you probably heard this quote that talks about you have to be always present. What happens today is the future of yesterday and the past of the tomorrow. So it's basically, you have to be always, the only moment that we have is right here, right now. So every time that we choose different, and in Access Consciousness, we talk about, we choose every 10 seconds. Everything that we do in our life is about to change in 10 seconds time. Why? Because in 10 seconds, you decide to have breakfast or no, have a coffee or no, call the friend or text her later, connect to a workshop or no, you're too busy, or I'll watch it later. Every single decision that you make in your life, it will make you choose something for yourself or for someone else. If you choose for someone else, so you are probably getting into the pleasing everyone or the good girl syndrome or things like that. When you start listening to your own truth and going with what you feel that you want, that's how you start feeling empowered. After a while, when you start practicing this, because that's anything, when you are conscious about something, you start changing it little by little. It's very rare to be like, no, I'm changing from yesterday to today. When you start changing gradually, it's like a muscle that you start practicing, your awareness muscle. The moment that you catch yourself like, oh my God, I'm about to get into the victim mindset, retract, is you are going with your heart instead of with your mind. And we spoke about that a little bit on the previous workshop. The mind, it could be amazing, and it can also be very dangerous. And when I say dangerous, it's because the mind is the one that creates the stories of victimhood, the stories of sadness, of shame, of challenges, of all these things that we don't want to look at. That's the victim. You feel that everything happens to you instead of the things happening for you to learn something new. When you start working with your own consciousness and silencing your mind and letting your soul speak louder, you will realize that the signs are always around. Your awareness will start increasing. And at some point, you will start realizing, as soon as you say something, you think, oh my God, that's my old self. Damn it, it's back. I thought it was under control. It's okay. I mean, it's not going to happen from one day to another. The idea here is that you are aware that there's like the new person that you want to become and the one that you just don't want to be anymore. This is not who you are. And that's where we evolve and we change and we break in cycles. Usually when you start breaking cycle, I have even a tattoo on my arm that is about cycle breaker, because when I realized that I was doing so many things that my mom, my aunties, my grandmas, they couldn't do. They didn't have the opportunities, they didn't have the voice, maybe the money, or even if they had the money, I mean, you were not going to grab a backpack and move to the other side of the world, or go study overseas, or go dance in the forest. I mean, maybe they wanted to do it, but they just were not comfortable doing it. They were not able to do it because it was not in their essence. Because very young in their life, they got conditioned that was not something that they could do. It got ingrained in their brain that that's not the way you are. So imagine if we could go back to the time when we started from fresh, from zero, and you just say, who do I want to be before everyone else tells me who I have to be? I mean, do we even know that? I mean, think about it. Even for me, I'm like, wow, I think I want to say it again. If you could go back to that moment that your little person started to being created as an individual in this society, imagine who you wanted to be before someone else, call it school, society, media, friends, told you who you have to be to fit in, to be friends of someone, to go to this school, to go to this work. Many times we just have to play a role, you know? You almost like you put a costume to go to a place, because it's like, this is who I have to be to fit in. This is who I have to become to be in this particular circle of friends. I remember something that happened to me. It was that I realized that I was going to see my friends, which I still love until this day. But I noticed that something in me was changing, because when I was engaging in conversations that maybe a year ago I was going to be laughing and having the best time, now I was like thinking differently. Within me, I became really quiet. I was always listening to the conversations, paying attention, but I was not engaging anymore. And that's when I realized that something in me was just different. The things that used to make me laugh and I used to be very engaged and really into it. After a while, this is not what I want anymore. And it's interesting because if you are able to speak to your parents or an older friend, or even if your grandparents or great aunties, uncles are around, you ask them these type of questions. If you ask them, do you feel who you are is who you really wanted to be? Would you have changed something? I have asked things like that to my parents, and to my surprise, they didn't even have an answer, because it didn't even cross their mind, because no one ever asked them that. I mean, they told them what to do and who to be, and they just did it. They didn't question anything. I remember my dad told me that when he finished school, my grandma said to him, you have three options. You are either a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. You choose. And the good thing is that my dad is an engineer. He took one of those tests, and he was meant to be an engineer, so he chose that. But I remember I was like, what? Like, what if you wanted to be an artist? I mean, my dad is a very, very good guitar player. And even now that he's retired, I say, why don't you just go and start playing the guitar and just, this is what you love. And in his mind, he's still an engineer, a manager, all those labels that he had for 60 years, I don't know how long. So this is interesting. And I'm mentioning this because people from other generations sometimes don't even think about these things. Who do you want it to be when you were 6 years old? Is this who you are now? And even if you end up working in something different, you have the weekend or your own time to do what is passionate for you. Painting, dancing, creating, anything, journaling, anything that allows your true nature to flow. Because when you start doing that, that's when your wild archetype gets activated. And this is something that I'm very passionate about, and some of my friends know about it, is that the word wild is being, it's almost like it's been outcast. It's been, there's so much charge in this world. When you think about something wild, you think like a wild animal, something that is dangerous or crazy or rebel, something that it just cannot be, um, you know, something that you cannot control. And I find that that's not true. And I learned that that's not true. When you talk about the wild archetype, that is essentially to go back to your nature, to your true nature. Not, as I was saying before, not who people told you had to be, not who you have to, the label you have to be wearing every day to please people, to be the good girl, but just allowing your true nature to flow freely and honor that person. Nowadays, because I still do design, I don't work for a corporate world, but I do branding packages for small businesses. And I also do energy work, and I also do illustrations. And I'm starting to do these dancings and other things that I want to incorporate to my work and my life. And I feel like now that I'm allowing myself to release the wild woman in me, I feel more connected to nature. I feel more connected to my essence of who I was when I was a child. I think I mentioned when I was a kid, I used to love to play in nature and with the plants and the insects. That was like my happy place. And only a few years ago, I started to reconnect with that little girl. And I started to see the beauty of going to the park, even in the middle of the big city, but just see the grass and the animals and letting myself express and say, I am a designer. I'm also a holistic practitioner. I also create illustrations. It's just you become a multidimensional individual, not only the box that someone told you that you needed to fit in. That box, it could be round, triangular, huge, could be a castle. It's up to you what you want to create with that and what color you want to paint that box as well. Many times they tell us that It needs to be black because, everyone wears black and it's who you have to be. What if you want to be a rainbow? What if you want to be glitter or gold or silver? It's a beautiful quote that I read, I can't remember where, that it says, people that please others are usually raised to be the glue in society or in group of friends. You're the glue. You're the person that attracts everyone. You're in the middle of social gatherings and all that. But in reality, when you start shedding all those labels, you become the glitter. You were not meant to follow conventions. You were not meant to close your throat chakra or don't say things or what you thought. You were meant to shine. And now when I talk to friends or some clients and they tell me, I feel like I have a message, I want to start sharing what I have learned. I said to them, start doing it. And they are like, but they tell me, who is going to listen to me? This is linked to expectations. This is linked to the person that you have been for all your life. And suddenly you say, I think I want to start sharing my story. But then they lack confidence because they were told that they could not be that star or that, shine bright, because when you start shining bright, automatically you're not part of the box. You're not part of the group. You're going to be, everyone's going to see you. Everyone's going to ask questions about you, maybe good ones, bad ones, comment about it, not comment about it. And you have to feel ready to accept all that. And with that, I wanted to clear the energy as well. Everything, lifetime, every energy, space, consciousness, and choice, magic, miracles, and possibilities that you feel related to shining bright, that having your own voice, and that not letting your light be small anymore. Everything that is, you destroy and create that. Right, wrong, good and bad, but and poke on the show, but puppets and beyonds. I just felt that needed to be done. Need to clear that. About the lack of confidence that I was just mentioning, that when someone tells me, even me, because as I said at the very beginning of the talk, is like everything that I say is because it has happened to me. It's been part of my journey or part of the stuff that I have learned through my journey. I was once in a position that I was saying, who's going to listen to me? I mean, who am I? I don't have this following, or I'm not famous, or I'm not this person or that person. And this is just what society have made us believe, that because we are not this way, you cannot be yourself, you cannot be the glitter. The interesting thing is that those people that we follow that have thousands of followers or communities, big communities, we didn't start following them when they were tiny. We found them when they were huge. So it's interesting to see it that way, because everyone started little, but we just don't know that story. Some people, they tell their stories, but some people don't. You find them and they are already, this big entity or business or person or whatever you want to call them. But everything is started from zero. And nothing is going to grow until you let your own light shine. When you start telling the truth, you reconnect with your wild woman, with the light, with your true nature. And you start little by little identifying all those traumas, all those cycles, everything that your ancestors couldn't do that now you are doing. And that's the beauty, because as women, when we reclaim our voice and we move and we dance and we shake the body, it's not only for us that we're doing it. We're doing it for mom, for sisters, for aunties, for grandmas. When we move and when we dance consciously, and you connect with the energy of your ancestry and you do it you're transmuting the energy, you're just dancing with them. And that's beautiful. Whoever have done it, if you've done it, it's so comforting and emotional and motivational for you to keep doing the work, because you know it's not only for yourself, you know that you're carrying almost like a legacy, because they couldn't do it. So you are doing it for them. Imagine whoever comes after you, that legacy that you're going to give them. You already broke the cycles. You are already connected with your true nature. Whoever little girl, little boy that is seeing you, imagine that's already a cycle breaker. Actually, maybe they don't even have to break any cycles because they are already free, right? That's exactly what we want to do. Do the work so then other generation, younger generation can see that we are adults and we are different because we chose to look to our darkness to see the light. And just remember that the stars, the brighter the star, the darkest the background. So that means that the more you work in your shadow and you face your fears, the more you're going to shine bright, because you're going to befriend your shadow. Every time that it comes to you, you're going to say, oh yeah, hi friend, I recognize you, but now we're friends. I'm not a victim anymore. I accept you. I see you. I recognize you and I acknowledge you, but I'm letting you go. You're not part of me anymore. And that's when you start feeling empowered. Doesn't affect you anymore. The other way around, you actually can talk about your experiences for others to say, okay, she could do it, I can do it. And that's what I said to my clients. And it's funny because if you work with clients, you see that the clients that you attract, it's incredible. They're like a reflection of yourself. So you can see, wow, I see myself in you. And when you tell them the story, it's like you see in their eyes, it's like, okay, yeah, I understand, you understand. It's a beautiful relationship. Yeah. All right. And now let's go to the questions. If anyone has any questions or comments, anything came to mind, you can use the microphone or you can use the message box. Anything about cycle breaking, breaking cycle, sorry, or the black sheep. Do you think you were a black sheep, or I only realized a couple of years ago? Or about the victim mindset of shedding it. That was a hard one as well, for me at least.
I mean, I'll just share in speaking. It's just easier.
Yeah,
Can you
go
hear
for
me?
it. Yeah, I think
Okay.
the same.
I just relate to everything. And like I've been thinking a lot about my mom, my grandmothers through this whole talk.
Mhm.
I've been thinking about them a lot lately, and my aunt. And it's funny because, like, as a little kid, I was very much like the obedient kid in society, but like I was very different at home. But it was like mostly when I was at school or that kind of thing that I felt this pressure to be a certain way, to be like a really good student, to obey, and all this. And it was not until I got sick, I got physically sick in my teen years, did I start to be like, I had, I guess, like my first version of an awakening,
Mhm.
of like, wow, I need to take care of myself. Like it doesn't, this other stuff doesn't really matter. Um, but so I started that journey a long time ago, and I feel like there's been a lot of work there, but still there's like the later stuff was like the victim mindset stuff, that I've worked on more in recent years. And then now thinking of my family, I can relate to like my aunt. I think my aunt is a lot like me. Like I think if she grew up in my generation, she'd be more of a cycle breaker. I think she like wanted to, because we have like similar characteristics, and she's like quite feisty, and like, you know, it's like she tries in her own way, but she still grew up, you know, she's older than my dad. So she grew up in like right in the 50s, you know, so she was sort of like stuck in this of what she was supposed to be, and the only job she could have was be a school teacher, and she had to have 2 kids, and you know, and then she got a divorce, and so it like shattered her life. And anyway, I'm just thinking about like her life, and like my grandma's life, and my mom's life, and I feel like all of them like really haven't, like your parents, how you mentioned, like didn't really stop to think like, what do I want? Because they didn't feel like they could stop to think about
Exactly.
it.
You're
You
totally
know, like
right.
they just have to get on with it, you know, and especially as women. And so yeah, so I'm just really, I feel like we're all very lucky to live in a time where we're like these resources are more accessible to us. And it's still hard because we still are encoded with these things, and you know, in our DNA, but also as kids. But yeah, I don't know about you guys, but it makes me, I've been feeling for a long time like that we were meant for this time on earth where we feel like, okay, we can take this on, you know, like we're ready. And yeah, I guess for a long time it was all about me, and now I feel like it's so much more about my ancestors, I guess
Yeah.
is what I'm getting at. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks for sharing, Kim. You're totally right about that. It's like it's almost like when you start awakening and being conscious about yourself, I almost feel like the next step is being aware of who came before you, why you are here, and your mom and your grandma, not even mom and grandma, it's almost like aunties, you know, it's like all these people that are before you came before you. And I also have an auntie that I feel like she was a massive cycle breaker. She was the rebel, but because of that, she was always almost like put on the side. Oh, she's like crazy, and she's was labeled out like she's weird and don't trust her. And I just feel like she was just born in the wrong year. She should have born like, I don't know, 30 years later or something like that. Um, but that's also very empowering for us to do the work, because we have options and accessibility to so much information. Is crazy. Like only today I was like, oh my god, I found 2 more books that I need to read, and it's like my list of books and the resources keep growing, and I'm like, I need more hours in the day because I need to absorb more. Now I bought an audiobook because I feel like maybe at least when I'm exercising I can listen to the book, so I can be doing that, you know, faster. um but yeah, ancestry is super interesting. It's a we're going to touch that later in this workshop series. But yeah, thank you for that. Anyone else that wants to ask any questions or comment anything? Yes, you're in mute, Saya. No, do you guys can hear her?
I can see her unmute and mute, but both
Yeah,
times
but your
can't
voice
hear
is
you.
not.
Yeah.
Not yet. Hmm. Oh, okay. While Saya is sorting that, does anyone else has a comment or anything or a perspective of anything that we spoke today? I'm conscious it's 7:30 now, so if you need to go, go. If not, we can chat a little bit more. You good? Saya, nothing.
It doesn't work.
Oh, it worked now.
Oh, it worked. Okay. All right.
That's funny.
Okay, good. At
Awkward.
least I can speak up. Yeah, so I was like kind of remembering my grandma. So I was born in Japan. I grew up in Japan, but like I have a Korean side of blood. So my dad's my dad's side and the grandpa is like they're Korean.
Okay.
And then my grandma came to Japan because of it was like a second war or some like around the time. And then she told me the story about her. And then now I really remember she said when she came to Japan, she couldn't speak Japanese at all. So she couldn't say anything to, anyone what she wanted to tell.
Wow.
And then, yeah, like it just makes me a little bit emotional. If you think about, it's not the, how to say, because of like, language also like really, or like not just language, sorry, the, how the world, like a war, the kind of things, just like can't express, can't tell anything. And then like if you think about energetic perspective, how she was, she probably her throat chakra was blocked. But at the same time, I'm so glad I could hear about her story.
Her story.
Yeah, her story. Yeah, because now she is already passed away. And I wish I really could know about her even more. But now I can't ask, like physically.
Yeah.
But it's just how important to understand, even just like, my parents are still alive. So why not to just hear their story,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I
Exactly.
thought. Yeah.
Thank you, Saya. Yeah, and that's really nice, beautiful what you said about parents, because sometimes we grow up and they are my parents, your parents, and we don't think about them as individuals. They had their lives and their stories, their education, and their parents, what they live with their own stories at home or school, and everything that happened to them made them the way they are now. And so they didn't have internet or access to Amazon, or to buy everything so easily, or even people were just not sharing. I mean, there was no internet, so it was going to be extremely hard to share your knowledge with people. So I remember when I started seeing my parents that way, and not from a judgmental point of view, like, oh, she's or he's that way, but just trying to understand, where is that coming from? What happened to them that made them that way? So when you start seeing them with compassionate eyes and not from the judgmental point of view, it's a lot easier to accept them and just trying to understand where they're coming from, even though you think maybe completely different. You just listen, and then you try to present your point of view as well. And sometimes they listen and sometimes they don't, because that's the way they were raised. They grew up with parents that they were the owners of the truth, right? No one would say opposite to them. They were like, that's the truth and this is the truth, even if I'm wrong, no, because this is what I'm saying. A lot of families grew up that way, and that was just how it was back then. Imagine like 100 years ago. Oh my God. I mean, literally 100 years ago, or maybe a bit more time, we would have been prosecuted for having these gatherings of like talking about feelings and family and talking about dad and mom and what they did. Oh, if we go back to like the 17th century, we'll be like in the middle of the plaza, just about to get being burned alive with the like witches, because that's sad in story. But witches, I didn't share the word witch come from wisdom, which is the person that is connected to nature. And most of all of them, they were women and some men that they just refused to follow the rules of society back in that time. And because of only saying the truth or being true to themselves, which is what we want to be now, they got killed. No one believed them. I was reading something before this call that says that if you live in the 17th or 16th century, you were considered a witch if you were too pretty or too ugly, if your nose were a bit too big, if you spoke your truth, if you had your body was not like, you were too slim or too big. It was just insane. Like, what? So it's crazy. And if you were on top of that making your own money because you seen clients, or if you were connected to nature, or you were speaking your truth, so that was heresy. It was not, again, no following the rules of religion and society back then. So anyway, that's a different story, which we will touch when we talk about the cosmic mother, Mother Earth and all that. But yeah, okay. It's 7:37, so let's just park here. Thank you so much for who could join, and we'll see you next Friday and Saturday for the other side. Thank you. Enjoy your day. I
Thank
hope
you, Vanessa.
it was helpful.
It was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Bye.
Bye.